Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Common Sense Guys channel. How are you all doing today? I thought that we'd have a little conversation about the idea of if nationalism is bad in every essence and every sense of the word, and patriotism is bad and racist in every sense of the word, why isn't the SNP, the BBC, Sky News, and all other major news outlets not calling out the Scottish nationalists that are on a particular highway, stopping a certain group of people from coming into Scotland because they are purely a different ethnicity from a different country? I thought that that was frowned upon. Or is that a case of it doesn't really matter if it's against a group that we already dislike, or we perceive the whole of the group to be a certain specific way? I don't know. Let's find out, shall we? So, as you can see here, we have a news article from The Scotsman that is talking about Saturday, the 4th of July, where a group warns motorists travelling from England to stay out of Scotland. The reasons why is because they're apparently plague carriers for COVID-19, and apparently they're English, so, that's more than enough reason, apparently, to certain Scottish nationals and nationalists to exclude people from travelling from one border into another border, or as we like to call it, from one country to another country. Remembering how I believe the SNP want to have freedom of movement, how the people that are following these Scottish nationalists are SNP supporters that are obviously after the abolishment of these types of border controls that they themselves are actually enforcing onto other people, which I suppose in itself could be considered, I don't know, ironic. But let's just read and find out what's going on at this moment in time, shall we? So, welcome to Scotland. Calls have been made for Nicola Sturgeon to condemn a group of Scottish nationalists who staged a protest close to the border with England after they waved provocative banners and told people travelling north to stay the F out. Photographs and video footage emerged online on Saturday showing a small convoy of cars and vans fastened with salters, SNP flags, and independent slogans parked at a rest area on the A1 route towards Berwick upon Tweed. Now, the reason why so many people are, in my opinion, are outly, or rightly should I say, as well as outly outraged about this is because of the hypocrisy. If this was to do with English people that had English flags or UKIP flags or flags that we would associate with the identity of what we call far right racists or nationalists, why would it be a case of they would be completely and utterly denigrated depending on whatever the size of their, let's say, catchment or people protesting would be? It wouldn't matter their numbers. It would matter that they are protesting immigrants, they are protesting borders, they are protesting this and that. The reason why people are so annoyed, or at least why I can understand why they're so annoyed, is because when a different country, a country that is perceived not to be the racist England that's doing it, and is now the Scottish nationals that are now using similar slogans to what we would classify as far right nationalists from the UK, we now do not engage in condemning them. We don't engage in condemning supporters of the SNP. Nicola Sturgeon and Scottish nationals are not condemning these people from stopping English people or trying to stop English people from coming north of the border. Why? Why is it okay to hate on certain groups, but it's not okay the other way round? Me personally, I'm of the opinion that it is not okay to hate anybody or anything based solely on the groups. It has to be done on ideology, and it has to be done on what they individually believe, rather than it being purely based on, well, you come from England, you come from Afghanistan, you come from Saudi Arabia, you come from China, so on and so forth. It doesn't matter where you come from, in my opinion, it matters the ideas in which you are bringing forth. But this doesn't seem to have any sort of instance of that. This is purely a case of let's hate on the English because they are English. No other reason, no other rationale, just let's be proud Scottish people and let's hate on the dogged English for no other reason than they're English. This should be called out. Racism or bigotry of any kind, regardless of who it's against, should be called out. The fact that this isn't because the people that the SNP, in my opinion, generally need to support them are these people. Are these Scottish nationals and nationalists that are so against England that they will do anything to support any sort of form of inherent bigotry or overted bigotry towards English people. But those are just my opinions. Let's have a look at the story further on, shall we? So, eyewitnesses claimed that campaigners were wearing hazmat suits and masks could be heard shouting "Plague Carrier" at northern-bound vehicles, reading out number plates on live streams, and brandishing banners with messages such as "Keep Scotland COVID-free." One such banner was tied to the sign welcoming motorists to Scotland. So, it seems like you have people that are trying to say that anybody that's travelling from England to Scotland is a plague carrier that has COVID-19, that is going to be spreading it from one aspect to another aspect. That could be true. But how do you know that this is actually coming up to be true? How do you know that this is actually true? One doesn't. One can only assume that this is truth. One can only assume that this level of bigotry that is directed towards all English people, or all people travelling from the south of the border to north of the border, from England to Scotland, are apparently COVID carriers simply because of where they come from. Can you imagine, and rightly so, how people would be classifying, oh, they're refugees, and so on and so forth, so they shouldn't be coming to this country? It's amazing how when certain skin colours or national identities are involved, how bigotry and forms of racism are not actually called out when it should be called out regardless. If you're going to do it for one, do it for all. If you're not, then don't bother, because otherwise you're only virtue signaling and using a political ideology to push forward a narrative rather than actually standing by any level of principle. But then again, who am I kidding? Most people only stand by their ideologies rather than levels of principle, especially when it goes against their own ideology. But I digress. I'm going to very shortly now play a video that comes from Agent P on Twitter, which, as you can read, is at Agent P22. I suggest that you go and subscribe or follow him on Twitter, because if you want more information about this, he does seem to have a fair amount on his Twitter page. I will now play that video.
Hi everyone, as you can see, quite a few of us here today. We're really laying it on thick. So basically what we're saying is, stay the fuck out. We've got everybody here, the usual crew. But this is how it is. Yep. COVID-free. It's got a bit wet, but we're not too worried about it. So, we've got a nice sign, which one you see it's got sales sorted. Here with Boogie Box. Hey, me up! You got shelter? Okay, no on here. Jim, please come along. Basically, stay the fuck away. Alright, Dave's doing a live feed. Go to his page, you'll get it there. Alright.
So, now that I've played that video, and you can tell that the campaigner himself was saying, basically we're just saying the F out, and it doesn't really matter to who, what, where, and when. It seems that they're using COVID, in my opinion, as a form of a justification for being bigoted towards a group of people, just based on where they come from, rather than actuality of what they may or may not have or be spreading. But again, the mainstream media, the BBC, Sky News, and politicians like Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP, the party itself, that rely on people like this, that rely on stirring up the nationalistic sentiment, the national hatred towards the English and other people, to be able to garner their support for independence in general, is okay. Because you need to garner up apparently that racist narrative towards the English, or hatred or bigotry towards the English, because otherwise how are you going to get independence if you don't formulate and cultivate that hatred towards the English? One could very easily assert that with Nicola Sturgeon's rhetoric about how the English are bad, how the English are dictating to us what we can and cannot do, how the rhetoric itself is denigrating English as a person, as a peoples, as a nation, rather than it being just the politicians, or rather it being just the conservatives, or whatever, is now pointing out and funding and is now flaming the ideologies of these nationalists that are able and are willing, and doesn't seem to be being called out by their own government at the point of recording this, towards anybody. Because they are the foundation for the SNP. Does that mean that the SNP themselves are actually supportive? I say that reservedly because it does scare me to think that that is an actual possibility. But does that mean that because they haven't called them out, that they are in turn a quiet supporter? And if they're not supportive, does that mean that they are not inherently against the idea because they're not condemning them? Or is it just a case of them politically supporting by non-condemnation, because they know if they do, they would lose a mass amount of their base? Interesting take on that, isn't it? That are the SNP themselves not calling these types of people out? And admittedly, it's only a small amount of people that went and did this on the border, so to speak. But it's still a story, and it's still people that are putting their nationalism and using their form of nationalistic pride to bigot and prejudice towards another demographic, another nationality, purely based on national hatred. So, my final thoughts on this is going to be along the lines of why hasn't the SNP, the Scottish Government, called out these people, even if there is only a small number, and I'm not denying there is only a small number, but why isn't the government themselves calling out this level of bigotry, this level of prejudice towards where people are literally allowed to throw hateful and bigoted signs towards people that they don't even know if they are Scottish in the cars, that are going to visit family, relatives, or whatever, or if the people are actually working from England into Scotland, or whatever. They have no idea who these people are that are coming into the country, but yet are so resound onto the point of if you come from south of the border, from the north of the border, that for some reason and somehow you are a plague carrier, you are beneath Scottish people, you are beneath this, you're beneath that, and in other words, to quote the people of our time get the F out, or stay the F out. That why isn't this actually being called out by the Scottish government? If it can be called out by the English government, by the English Conservatives, by English people to other English people when this is done, why can't other Scottish people and other Scottish ministers, especially the first minister, Nicola Sturgeon, call this type of bigotry and hatred out? Unless it has something to do with a form of a base, as in how people used to conflate or contrast the idea of UKIP not calling out certain aspects of when other people used to protest. It's an interesting comparison, isn't it, on that side of things? If you put the way that people treat UKIP and how UKIP never called out these people, why can we not do the same towards the SNP then? If the SNP are not calling out these people, can we not, by contrast and not by historical evidence, say that they must then be at least softly supporting these people by not calling them out? Do they not need to physically condemn these people to show that they are not in support of these people? And until they do that, if they ever do, can we actually say that they support them? Because if every other Labour, Scottish Labour and other Scottish parliamentarians have come out and actually condemned this behaviour, why is it not a case that the SNP would? Unless for another ulterior motive. And by the way, this is all my opinion. I may be completely and utterly wrong, and maybe in the next couple of days, the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon herself will come out and condemn this form of bigotry and this form of racism towards the English, if you will, for what it actually is. But if you want my honest opinion again, I would put money on it that she won't, because these are the type of people, in my opinion, that are a foundation to her base by the fact of wanting that separation from, and as a whole of the UK, from Scotland to England and from England to Scotland. They want that separation. They want that Scottish independence, remember, and the way that you do that is you drum up nationalistic pride. But remember, it's wrong from one aspect and political party to drum up nationalistic pride, because apparently that's racist. But when another party does exactly the same thing and has exactly the same things happen in contrast of doing that, they're absolved of the reference of them actually doing it. They're absolved of any sort of point of responsibility of cultivating that sort of ideology. If we are going to be consistent on our principles and our ideological stands of calling out these forms of bigotry and racism and whatnot, should we not do it all the same and for every form of bigotry and racism? Otherwise, we're only calling out what goes against our own beliefs, or our political ideologies more than likely. Surely if we are going to be principled and root out all racism and all forms of bigotry and all forms of prejudice, shouldn't we, the SNP and Scottish nationalists, call this form of racism, bigotry and prejudice out? Though I've got a feeling it won't be. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. Please do not forget to like and share this video, and please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much, and I want to speak to you all again very soon. Thank you very much. I bid you farewell. I bid you adieu. Take care. See you again real soon. Bye-bye for now.